you guys have a good holiday? You guys finished celebrating finally?
No, we just have New
You
Year's.
guys got Three Kings Day coming up.
We don't do that.
Dude, I'm still recovering. I still don't have my energy back. Like I feel.
Yeah.
I go up the stairs. I'm out of breath.
You might have gotten COVID.
That's what I told him. He probably did have.
But you can't be positive if you don't test. So.
Yeah.
Well, if I do,
we think that's what it is because the person we were hanging out last week had it, and then I got sick, and then he was fine, and then he got it like 3 days later, and then we go around other family members that were like coughing, and like everyone was just like in a big petri dish over the weekend.
Yeah, you'll live.
Yeah. We're fine. He's very dramatic. He's like, I should have gone to urgent care.
If you're out of breath walking up the stairs, definitely COVID.
That's definitely COVID.
No, but it's not from like the respiratory. It's not my breathing.
No, it's not COVID. That has nothing. Yeah, I got tired. It's just going up the stairs.
Like fatigue. I go up the stairs.
COVID gives you that.
Yes,
I've never had that.
But you said you had it twice already, so this will be your third time.
Yeah,
and it's crazy because Jen was making fun of me for wanting to go to urgent care, but I was dehydrated, so I was I thought
so
about
now you got the real brunt of COVID, man, those bitches, they're just being like
knocked out for 24 hours last week.
It started with a cold. The cold was your typical cold, congestion, and that's about it. A little coughing, that's it. And I shook that off. And then all of a sudden, this stomach bug just like...
Yeah. It hits everyone a little differently.
Yeah, our son and my dad is really sick right now.
I'm healthy.
Is that why you're messed up? Or why are you messed up, Karis?
She's about to rob a bank.
Yeah. Need some extra cash. Let's put it that way.
No. As I was saying before, she's beautifying herself for the in preparations for the summit because she's going to be our fearless host with the mostest at the summit.
But okay.
We should all start beautifying ourselves, I guess. What is part of your beauty routine, Ben?
Not sleeping, drinking, eating junk food.
My whole body's in pain right now. I went to the gym for the first time in like 2 weeks, and they were like, "You want to do a urine weigh-in?" And I was like, "No." Let's revisit this in a few weeks. I have a lot of holiday weight right now that I got to work on. But in any case, are you ready for the summit?
I am. My slides are done. I heard you kind of panicked a little bit when Ro told you that I was not going to practice.
Are you practicing or not practicing?
I'm probably not. I have this weird thing of like standing in a room by myself and like just talking to
yourself.
Is this your first time on like a stage, like a big stage like this?
Since college, yeah.
Since college, yeah.
Yeah.
The secret,
but I have a mindset of that like most of the people in a room are people that I know and that we're friends with. So I'm just gonna talk to them like I talk to them on a regular basis. So
just say you and Ben are throwing a big party, pretty much.
Yeah.
What do they always say to picture everyone naked?
Yeah, the secret is to imagine everyone naked or in their underwear. That's the best way to do it. I've been exposed to the stage as since I was a very young boy. I used to play the piano and stuff. But this is something new that you guys learned, right?
You've done a million things.
Out of a million things that I do, hobbies that I have in my life. But when you have the lights on you, you can't see the audience. That's the best part. You don't even know if you got all these eyeballs on you. It's sort of like when I'm doing my lives every Monday and I'm just talking to a camera. I don't know who's watching. Yeah. So you just got to keep talking and just talk. So,
yeah, that's
so
the
I'm going to do my best to just put bright spotlights on you so you don't see the audience.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. We got 2 weeks, Ben. 2 weeks.
What do you guys got planned for the new year?
No idea yet.
Yeah, we were thinking of going to a football game in DC. I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
In DC?
Yeah, the Niners versus the Commanders.
But we'll see.
I don't know.
We'll be home. What do you guys do? I know your kids canceled your Christmas plans, huh?
We canceled their Christmas plans.
Oh.
Well, number one,
the kids didn't want to go.
Well, number one, the kids they kind of didn't want to go.
No, they wanted to. Aiden really wanted to go with his GoPro. Remember?
Aww.
But the little one didn't want to.
The little one was scared because now he's like in the top tier, and he's like, I don't want to go on the Black Diamond, and I'm so scared.
But it all worked out because I have no money, so
we have
It
no
all worked
money
out.
and we have no time.
I still haven't done my taxes yet. You know how I normally do my taxes during this week, right? I
Yeah.
haven't had the chance to do that because I've been rehearsing my ass off. And not only that, I've been doing a lot of admin stuff for the summit. So I think if I'm feeling pretty confident that I can pull this off again next year. But
Karis, what are your thoughts?
Kara says no, but I think I can do it. I now have a better idea.
Like this first one will determine, like seriously,
Yeah,
what people,
that's your best.
what people's experiences and what whoever come, what they're gonna spread to other people. Like seriously,
Yeah.
that's gonna determine. It's not you or me.
Yeah, it's all the speakers who are sharing the stage with us. Those presentations.
It's all the afterwards the promo that's gonna go out from the experienced ones. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first one. No one really knows how to throw these things together.
Yeah.
So of course it's gonna suck.
You know, it'd be nice if there's next year, but we need to plan better and well and don't rush.
We just jumped into the deep end. Well, when we say we, I mean I jumped into the deep end.
Yeah.
You're alone on your island.
No in this, okay?
But the thing is, done is better than perfect. A lot of pieces are falling in together. I'm not in the red. This summit didn't break me. It
just took your time.
It was a labor of love. I spent a lot of time on this, but as long as I'm not going negative.
I think, once we get all the promo, all the BTS, everything after the summit, maybe a month, 2 months later, you're gonna start right back in if you are thinking of doing next one.
And then also we were also trying to find our footing and find our wings with the podcast as well. We were trying to figure ourselves out as well. So we were trying 2 new things at the same time. So it was a little overwhelming, but I think we have a good system now, and I think I'll know what to do for the next one. Anyway, you guys ready to get this podcast started?
Let's do it.
I guess so.
All right, guys, welcome to the Focus AI podcast. My name is Ben.
I'm Karis.
Jen.
And this is Ro.
And we are not focused AF.
Yeah.
What a way to start the new year.
Yeah.
Woo! So anyway, speaking of the summit, the lineup is all finished. It's all wrapped up. I guess this is our way to kind of segue to introducing our guest for today's episode. This is a gentleman who's been in our peripheral for a long time, actually. For as long as I've been a wedding photographer, he's been in our peripheral. And, the ironic thing is he hails from my old stomping grounds. And I've never actually crossed paths with him until recently. So it's very curious. But he's always been in our peripheral. But I'm sure you guys are huge fans of his as well. So I don't know how we're going to segue into this, but I want to introduce you guys to our guest of the podcast, our good friend Sam Hurd. Welcome to the podcast, Sam.
Hey, Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
That's the way you're supposed to introduce him. Just, hey, Sam.
Yeah, no need to overcomplicate ever. Thanks
Are we talking to Sam or the AI version of Sam?
Yes, I am an avatar.
Yes. There's a million versions
funny.
of Sam.
It's not uncommon for me to be within a very reasonable, drivable, commutable distance to a lot of people that I've known and talked to through the internet for years, and never actually meet them in person. Yeah. Until a decade later. But it's one of the advantages of being on the East Coast. At least it happens a little bit more often than I think it otherwise would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right before the show started, I was about to tell you, because you currently live in Baltimore, near the Fells Point area, right? Mm-hmm. So my family, for a little while in the early 2000s, we had a restaurant. Did you guys know this, co-host? That we had a restaurant also?
No, we did
learn
not.
something new every episode, Ben.
So anyway, we had anyway, it was a restaurant. And the thing is, my dad, that was his lifelong dream. He wanted to open a restaurant. And he finally got the chance to. But the thing is, his only connections to cooks were Chinese restaurant takeout places, right? But the thing is, what he wanted to do was open up like a luncheonette, like where you serve breakfast and stuff like that. So the menu was huge. It had like eggs and bacon and scrapple and a lot of Baltimore favorite stuff, right? And then also he had cheesesteaks, and also he had General Tso's chicken and fried rice and dumplings. He had like the entire menu covered. Eventually, we sold it because I guess the menu got too big, and we had like 1 million chefs in the kitchen trying to make all these different things. And now it's a pupuseria.
Get out of here.
Full circle moment with your friends right here. Tim's like, I don't get it. What's the connection?
I don't.
Well, this is the connection. It's in Patterson Park. It's in the Highlandtown area,
Yes.
right? And it's a pupuseria now. So that's the connection.
I remember one of my earliest conferences ever that I attended. I think this was like 2013. Somebody was giving a talk about pricing guides and just pricing yourself, and they had as an example a slide of essentially a restaurant that had everything versus a restaurant that had like very well curated, like pre-selected combinations of things for you. And it was just an example of how you deciding certain things for your clients can actually be a huge benefit. You don't have the decision paralysis along with apparently 70 chefs in the kitchen trying to make sense of all that variety. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I would be very curious to see what that menu looked like.
It was very bizarre. And I didn't really run it. I was just a bystander observer. It's a family restaurant. Yeah. But anyway.
I'm not blaming you.
Totally his fault. So I hate to lead into this like cliche of for those who don't really know Sam, but tell us a little bit about you for those who are just joining us and kind of new to the industry and kind of how you got into photography and that whole journey.
Okay, great. Let's see. I got my first camera when I was maybe 15 or 16 years old. It was an old Sony, and it actually took an old floppy disk. It was literally the one where you would insert a floppy disk and get like 2.5 megapixels.
I remember those.
You could take like two shots per disc or something ridiculous. Yeah. That was my first camera. And around that same year, my best friend from growing up, we've been best friends since we were like 7 years old. He also got a camera, a Sony that took mini discs. So like mini CDs that you could chuck in there. And anyway, that was sort of my start to photography. I grew up in a place called Lynchburg, Virginia, which is in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so we would just go on hikes and take landscape photos, basically, of like little creeks and flowers and stuff like that. And over the years, we kept up with photography as a hobby, but went to separate schools. And to reconnect over the summer, he and I did like the cliche backpacking through Europe thing, which was amazing. So we would take like 2.5 or 3 weeks. We did this 2 summers, just kind of backpacking on a shoestring budget, staying in hostels. And the entire focus of the trip was photography. But neither of us really photographed people at all. It was very focused on just the scenery of the places we were at and trying to cram as much as we possibly could into like that 3-week type of thing. We would do like 12 cities in 3 weeks or something like that.
Wow.
And that was kind of my entire experience with photography. I would just do sort of personal work, which was a lot of macro, abstract, nothing photos. But I had somewhat of a portfolio. And when I was graduating college, I studied information and computer science, but I was looking for jobs exclusively on Craigslist. This was like 2008. So it was before LinkedIn had really become a thing, and all the other various platforms that people use now, I'm sure. Hopefully Craigslist is still a hub for job listings. I have no idea, but I owe a lot to Craigslist. I think I found every place that I lived for every single year since I graduated college until I bought my home. And anyway, including a job. So I came across a listing for this place called the National Press Club, which I knew nothing about, but it's this facility in downtown DC. You can literally think of it as like a country club for professional journalists. It's been around for over 100 years, and it's a block from the White House. It's the top 2 floors of the National Press Building, which back when news was still in its heyday, like every paper would have a DC bureau office, and that was where it would be inside this building. So all the newspaper bureaus from all over the country and the world would be in this building. And the top 2 floors is where the journalists would go to like attend a press conference, just grab a drink. Like literally the upstairs private bar is, or members only bar has the liquor license #1 when prohibition was lifted.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's a lot of history there. And I showed up and I was like sitting in the lobby and I asked the lady at the front desk, I was like, so is this place what is this place? I had no idea. But they had posted, a listing for a photographer. They wanted to be able to sell photography as an add-on service to people holding like press conference events there. And I went in and interviewed, and I think they realized my work was good enough that they could pay me half of what I could probably be paid doing anything else with my actual degree. But it was still a salaried photography job. So I decided it was right in the heart of DC as well, which is pretty appealing being like 21. And I took the job and got, a basement apartment in the cheapest, scariest part of town that I could possibly manage. And that's when I started photographing people. I'll accelerate the story a little bit here. A couple years into working there, a coworker got engaged and she had like a $500 budget for a wedding photographer. And that was my first wedding. And ever since that first one, it's all I've ever eaten more of was weddings. So after a couple years of kind of doing both jobs at the same time, I eventually was traveling enough and overworked enough that I left the press club, no longer working full time for them and doing weddings on my own. So that's kind of the journey so far. But it was a great opportunity. It gave me access to some of the more famous faces you might see in my portfolio and stuff, which was a great opportunity.
So your first wedding gig was 500.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I went 500, 750. Yeah, 500, then 750, then 1500. Then I was at 2500 for like a year, something like that, just to scoop up as many as I could. And then once you bumped into the 3000s, at least in my market, that was kind of a dead zone where you would still get enough work, but it was still kind of like people either it was just this weird dead zone where I was out of so many people's budget for their weddings and not expensive enough for people that had a little bit more money. And so jumping up to the 5,000 plus range, I don't know, 4 or 5 as sort of my baseline starting made a huge difference just in terms of the level of experience that I was at and the quality of my work relative to the budget of most wedding clients, if that makes sense.
It does.
Did you ever apprentice under anyone, or everything was just learning as you go?
It was all learning as I go. There was no photography department at the press club when they hired me. So I literally started with my Nikon D50 and the kit lens that it came with.
Oh, D50.
And I had at the time, I thought it was frustrating, but I had the benefit of most of these events at the press club were open to the public. So a lot of DC, grizzled photojournalists would swoop in for the first 10 minutes of an event, shoot the heck out of it, and then send their images up to the wire and be on to the next thing. So I quickly learned by observation, like, oh, there are lenses that exist that you can zoom and the aperture doesn't change. And there's a prime lens where you can shoot with the D50 really crapped out over like ISO 600. So jumping up to a prime lens or something with a 2.8 aperture and all this really made a huge difference. And I strictly learned by observation, literally seeing photos from people that were standing right next to me at an event on the news that night or in papers the next day and be like, how did they get that photo? I was right next to them. I saw it happening. How come theirs looks so good compared to mine? And I would just figure that out and iterate over and over. And that was kind of my journey. And same with weddings. I kept myself kind of lower budget for a while because I didn't have any experience being around just the energy and chaos of a wedding. I just was never confident until maybe 50 weddings in, where I really felt like I had a handle on things.
Yeah, and you never because we haven't either. He did, but you never second shot or anything like that? You just kind of just dove right in?
Dove right in. I did second shoot occasionally just with other people that were a little bit more established than me, just randomly when I could. Most of them were people my age that had maybe a year more experience than me or something. But it was never it was kind of all over the place. I think I maybe second shot a dozen times in my first 3 years, something like that. And just kind of figured it out as I went, which I really liked because I appreciate now I think a lot of photographers approach things, they overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I kind of never had to. I've always sort of simplified and kept things the way that I thought it should be. And wedding clients don't know any different. They are hiring you for the first time usually, and they don't know what's normal or not in a lot of photos or in a lot of like full galleries. So yeah, it's worked out pretty well.
I know that all of us, when we first start, there's a process. I guess there's an evolution in our work. There's a process that we go through to eventually find our own voice in how we perceive the world and how we capture it in a photo, right? So, I guess at what point did you eventually, find your stride? Did you find your voice and like, this is who I am. This is how I want to photograph. Like, what was the catalyst for that? And how long did it take for you until you got to that point?
Yeah, great question. I would say it kind of breaks up into different columns. So there's the finding your own voice in terms of, and comfort level in terms of like your physical actual routine and approach on the wedding day. That took a solid 3 years for me to just purely feel confident and comfortable that I had seen probably every iteration of issue that I was ever going to see, barring some random, crazy, unique thing. Like after 3 years, I've certainly been to way more weddings than anybody else around me on that day had ever been to in their life, and could probably solve the issue and see problems coming from a mile away compared to everybody else. So that physical sort of being there in the moment, just managing people and personalities, 3 years was the tipping point where I was no longer nervous about like showing up for getting ready photos, but I was excited. It wasn't at all anxiety. It was just pure excitement. Photographically, like actually getting the images that I was consistently happy with, that was about 5 years. I knew around year 3 that I could at least hit a baseline where my couples were going to be happy no matter what. But for me to always feel like, okay, I know I got at least a solid dozen that I could blog from this. It was around year 5 that was consistently the case, where I didn't need 4 hours with the couple to do that. Like I could do it in 20 minutes if I had to, or any amount of time. So that was year 5. And then I would say, honestly, it was about year 10 before my editing came around to where my overall sort of starting preset was super consistent. And I was always happy no matter what camera body I was using, no matter what the light was. Part of it was, editing, the way a photo looks in editing does have a lot to do with how you light people in the source photo. And I was at the same time getting really, really consistent with that, finally coming into a series of editing steps that I was just super happy with. And ever since then, it's been smooth sailing. So I could shoot a wedding with my eyes closed now.
I was just about to ask if you're like, now that you've kind of found your footing, because people always want to get better or adapt, or like some creatives are never comfortable with where they're at. So you're saying right now you're like very happy in the place you're in as far as your editing and your work.
Totally.
You still don't beat yourself up a little bit?
I definitely walk away from shoots thinking, and this has always been an issue, to be honest, thinking like, oh, I don't know if I got anything, good. Nothing is resonating in my head. Like, oh, I have to look at that one. But I've realized over the years, that's just how I feel sometimes after shoots. And, give it a day or two between the session or the wedding and when you actually look at the photos. And I always am able to go back and, oh yeah, this is actually pretty cool. I was trying something in the moment. I guess I thought it didn't work, but now I see it does. And, and then I'm also doing things to, fill in and that gap of comfort and pushing myself by, I developed this tool called Insight that literally I can, as I'm shooting, send images off to a generative AI, and within a minute, it'll send me over text message back new pose ideas, which is a totally different creative input that takes some practice and getting used to. But as I'm shooting, I can quickly glance at my watch or at my phone when there's little downtimes throughout the session or the wedding day, and get this little insight into maybe a new pose that I wouldn't have otherwise thought of. And making room for that definitely takes some practice. I don't know that I could have done it 5 years ago when I was still worrying about what ISO I was at relative to aperture and shutter speed and all that. But now that everything else is so built up as muscle memory, I have this new area of headroom that I can add this new tool and other things too. I'm sure as time goes on. But yeah,
I've taken a look at it through the chat that you have on Instagram in regards of the app, and it's pretty crazy, like how it comes up with like different poses, like on the like putting someone in the foreground, putting someone out of focus. Could you talk a little bit more about like how that works, like what the algorithm does?
Yeah. So it takes it's highly tuned to work the best with a couple, like two people in a shot, but it does analyze and try and detect if it's two people or if it's one person and if it's more than two people. And based on that analysis, it basically goes through a really finely tuned prompt of generative AI. It's hard to describe, but basically what it does is it takes your source photo, it weights the source image so that it's heavily influencing what the generative AI is going to do. So you get a result with 4 different poses that has the same overall atmosphere and scene of what you're actually shooting with. So the light and the style of the light and the directionality of the light and the quality of it is all very similar. The bone structure and skin tone and size and shape of the subjects you're photographing, that's also very similar. It doesn't look exactly like your clients, but it's similar enough that within the pose idea, hopefully you could actually see what is actually possible with your environment. It's sort of like the next level of what a lot of people do, and I used to do when I started, of like having just a Pinterest feed of poses and inspirational compositions and stuff like that, but it's 1,000 times more applicable because you're actually seeing something within this
in real time
atmosphere of what you're working with. Yeah. So it's basically just been a really long multi-month process of me taking a source photo, seeing what the generative AI can output, and then tweaking sort of the input commands so that it actually is usable and helpful instead of just a complete. Because it's really easy to send a generative AI a source photo and then say, make this again, and it will do it. But to make it, like you said, put people in different areas of the frame or emphasize different areas of focus and all that, it's a lot harder to do. So it's basically done that. And then there's also like a seed of randomness in it as well, where I've got basically a catalog of thousands of images. It'll just randomly blend that source photo against to get just something you probably didn't anticipate in this shot. I mean, the whole concept of this is not to use the generative AI for anything that anybody else is going to see. It's for you in the moment to look at that and say, oh, I know what to do here now. I have a new idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so fun. It takes a lot of practice to get used to even remembering that, like, oh yeah, I forgot I could send this photo off. But the cool thing about it, and the hard thing for me to explain, so many photographers, I think, have tried with their professional camera bodies to send images like quickly to their phone or something like that. And the vast majority of photographers use like the Sony app or the Nikon app or the Canon app to do that. And they're all just terrible. They're so bad. So Insight actually leverages FTP, which is wonderful. Like if you can get your camera connected to FTP, it is literally as seamless as looking at the image on the back of your screen, hitting one button, you can get right back to shooting with no waiting. Like as it's transferring, it does it in the background. So there's no interruption or waiting for it to load and send to your phone. It just goes over FTP in the background, which was a huge hurdle for me to solve in a way that multiple people could use this as a service other than just me. And but it works great and it's super reliable as long as you have Wi-Fi or hotspot connection at all. That was a big part of it, was like making sure it wasn't an experience like all these apps where you had to connect over Bluetooth, and then sometimes you'd have to connect Bluetooth and Wi-Fi at the same time. And then you would finally get it to send, and then you had to wait for it to send before you could get back to shooting. Now you're missing moments.
It's a pain in the ass.
That's what I think a lot of people think is happening with Insight, but it's not that way. If you can set your camera up over FTP and save those settings, boom, you hotspot to your phone or your Wi-Fi if you have access to Wi-Fi wherever you're shooting, and and it's just one button. And you can send multiple images at the same time, which is cool. It takes about a minute to get the results back, but it's not like 1 minute per render. If you send it 5 back to back, you'll get those 5 after a minute, like back to back, next to each other. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How's the feedback that you've been getting from photographers so far?
Good. Some weird random bugs that like you don't learn about.
Would a penguin just show up and just like just show up on your head?
You're talking about those bugs. Yeah, sometimes you'll get someone's like arm growing out of their ear and weird stuff. But no. Like for example, like who would have thought? But if you have your camera shooting in Adobe RGB color space instead of sRGB color space,
right?
No matter what your file name is, even if you have it something custom, like in your camera, if you have it set to your initials or whatever for the file name, it will append to the beginning an underscore. So if it's in Adobe RGB, it'll be underscore whatever the file name is.
Oh,
and
shit.
It's so weird because the way Insight flags whose image is being sent based on what username, it separates the file name by underscore. And so underscore is the very first thing in the file name, which who would ever do that? It confuses it and it would like misassign the username. So that's the kind of like issue and bug that I've occasionally had to chase down where it's like, I don't even know why you're shooting in Adobe RGB. You should probably be shooting in sRGB.
So what happens? It just doesn't process or it does something funny?
Yeah, it just dead ends. Nothing happens because it can't assign the user. And so, but I can see all that kind of stuff in the logs and figure it out. But that was just one person that had that kind of problem.
Some random print snob.
I know. It's like, and I asked them like, why are you shooting in Adobe RGB? Like, I don't know. I was like, yeah,
it was for no reason.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's funny to learn about how many different ways people have their cameras configured and how often there are these phantom configurations that people just have set just because they've always had it set that way and they don't want to change something because they don't want it to break in a way, their workflow or their process that they don't realize until they're looking at the photos and the shoot's over. So I understand that, but it's so important to just read your manual. Like I remember when I switched from Nikon to Canon. So I shot Nikon DSLRs for 10 years, switched to Canon when they launched their mirrorless lineup with the EOS R. A lot of people give me crap for that because it's a single card slot, but whatever. I would fall asleep the first few nights with that camera in my hand, laying in bed, like configuring it and just making sure, because I'd never shot Canon like as a full-time thing. I was making sure that I was just investigating every single setting so that it was never going to be the case that nasty surprise like shooting in Adobe RGB. That's not a big deal, but if you wanted to work with Insight, it would be. I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be a problem. So. It's so important to do those things. And
that's a good segue to one of my questions, because one of the things we've noticed about you is like you are a gearhead, obviously, and transition a lot. So I'd love to know like the thought process and kind of how easy it is for you to transition into new brands, new models, cameras, how that is for you.
So it's funny. I definitely am a gearhead, and I love trying out everything and anything and all the new stuff. But I shoot very, very minimalist. I bring a couple lenses, one camera body primarily. I bring a second one as a backup. Yeah. But unless it's the ceremony, I really don't shoot two cameras at the same time all that often. And I rotate through what I shoot with as my main sort of go-to field kit very, very seldomly. Like, but I try a ton of stuff, and I've tried every Sony mirrorless since the A7 launched, and obviously I've been back and forth between Nikon and Canon. So at this stage, I'm very comfortable just floating between two camera settings. The worst thing is, newer camera bodies will have stuff relabeled in the menus. Canon is the worst at this, by the way. They'll just keep the exact same setting, but name it something different without telling you. It's like, this is so annoying because it sounds kind of the same, but it's not. You're like, it's in a different area. And anyway, aside from that, though, I'm very comfortable floating between whatever I can because I always am curious where the next sort of step change is going to occur. Is it the sensor level where ISO is just notably leaps and bounds better, or dynamic range, or an autofocus system? That happened with, a lot of people didn't understand why I switched from Nikon to Canon with the mirrorless system. It's because Nikon's first wave of mirrorless cameras had an autofocus system that it's good enough, like to a certain degree.
In low light, it sucks in low light.
It does suck in low light, but to a certain degree, you don't need it's better than a lot of the DSLRs people were used to. So that's good. But it's like, no, you don't understand. Compared to the baseline of what every other manufacturer is doing, Nikon cameras were nowhere near where they should have been. And accepting that, by the way, is a really tough thing to do sometimes when you sink thousands of dollars into a system only to realize it's behind. But Nikon caught up. Like once they released the Z9, and it only took me playing with the Z9 on the trade show floor at WPPI to realize, like, okay, Nikon, there's a step change here. They massively overhauled their autofocus, and it's perfectly usable as to where it should be now. Now, how's everything else? And anyway, so I'm just constantly looking for where that those step changes are occurring, and I don't. It's not that I don't want to get left behind, but the more you can use a camera system that certain aspects can get out of the way, like accurate, reliable autofocus all the time, no matter what, that frees up so much more headroom so that you can concentrate on the actual interaction of you and your clients and your composition and reading all those other things that matter. It's so tough to pay attention to any of that stuff if you're still worried about which eye is in focus or not.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What's your go-to for 2024?
I think I'm still going to keep my Canon R3 rig. I have two R3s. I think I'm going to stay in the Canon world, but I have been very, very happy with the Nikon ZF.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm not going to jump completely over to Nikon is that I'm only using adapted lenses with the ZF. They have a wonderful kind of range of adapters you can shoot through and get awesome results. But until I start acquiring more native Z-mount glasses, like lenses, I'm going to stick with the Canon as sort of my go-to. I have a feeling I'll shoot mostly Canon on wedding days and mostly the Nikon ZF on engagement sessions.
That's what we're doing. He's using the ZF for engagement and weddings now too.
Yeah. I'm going to bring it as a backup for weddings and just for whenever I feel like a change up, really.
It's way better than the Z6 than the Z6 II. Like autofocus wise, it's just like night and day. It takes a little to get used to because of the build, but it's a real cool camera to use, and I kind of like using it better than my Z8. Believe it or not, the Z8 is better every way.
There's something to the look of it. Like I'm not huge into vintage cameras or film cameras, anything like that. But even though I don't use like the cool retro knobs on top, there is something to there's just a fun kind of joy in having this camera that, I don't know, it's sort of operational, but it's like anything. Like aesthetics can really matter. Like I can't tell you how many microphones I own. It's a lot, and half of them I own just because they look really cool. They probably objectively sound way worse than other mics that I have, but just because they look cool, I play into it while I'm recording very differently. Just like literally, it can be that type of experience, and I think clients also react to seeing a camera that has a little bit of style behind it. They react differently, and how they're a little less. It doesn't feel so maybe clinical or like, I don't know. And some of that's probably just me being in my own head, but
no, it makes sense.
Yeah, some other clients confuse it for a film camera.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, it's a digital camera.
Then the film camera we have looks like just a
digital camera.
That's funny. Yeah, you got to charge extra for that. If you want, I can break out my film camera, and then it's just a ZF, a different color ZF. It's like the green one. The color
I did.
ZF, did you?
I bought the moss green ZF.
Nice.
It's awesome. I get a lot of compliments. People that see it, like people that don't even like cameras. That's a cool looking camera. And I'd be like, thank you.
It's so fun just to have hanging around your shoulder. It's great.
And it's so light. Like they have the little lenses that they made for like the 2.8.
26 or 28. Yep.
And they have the 40 millimeter f2. Those lenses, well, you can put them in your pocket. They weigh nothing.
Yeah. That 40 especially is great. I mean,
it's pretty good. I've used it for weddings. For backlight, when you have like sun behind your subject, it doesn't do that well. But like prep photos, like anything indoors, like it works great.
Yeah. Agreed.
You guys are going to make me spend money in 24.
I think Hey Karis needs one.
Well,
Hey Karis has enough cameras. Hey Karis has enough toys already.
You have You have 2 days to spend.
Yes, you do.
Right. Yeah.
2 days. No, I think I'm tapped out.
This
I'm tapped
summit
out.
is costing me all my money.
Okay. This summit's costing me a lot of money. Yeah.
Speaking of summit,
this is
transition
Ben
to,
money.
another question I had for Sam. When and how was your transition into education?
Oh, that's a great question. It kind of, so I don't exactly remember why I started this, other than I can say. Do you all know Ryan Brenizer at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So he's one of the first ones whose blog I came across when I was like, I just got hired to shoot my first wedding. What the heck is normal to shoot at a wedding? I don't know. And what I liked about his blog wasn't necessarily his wedding blog post, but his gear reviews and just writing an article.
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't the type of review that was overly fixated on like lens distortion or scientific tests. And it wasn't just
Like,
pictures of someone's
Ken
cat.
Rockwell?
Ken Rockwell.
Yeah, right. Ken Rockwell, though, to his credit, like that is a nice place to go when you need something really like, how much did that cost back in 1970? He has the stats for you, that's for sure. But Ryan's approach to blogging about lenses and camera bodies and all this, I just loved. And so as a way to just practice that and drive a little traffic and just have a reason to post anything to my website at all, I started doing lens reviews. Not because anybody asked me to, but just because. And then over time, I started to review more and more techniques and like various processes I would do while shooting. And so those kind of became like mini tutorials in a way, but I would keep it just vague enough, not even on purpose, but just vague enough that it would surface questions. And eventually, I had a friend who actually lived in Santiago, Chile. She was an expat from Michigan. One of the only people in that area that was shooting sort of an Americanized version of weddings, because their weddings were a lot different normally. Anyway, so she had a bit of a following there, and she's just a friend of mine asked me to come teach a workshop because a lot of people had questions about prisming and just like the finer details and specifics of certain techniques that I had already blogged about. And after that first workshop, which I did 2 days back to back, 2 separate groups, I did another one. And then I had somebody ask me to go somewhere else. So it really all started from just doing these 15-person small group workshops. And then occasionally a conference organizer would have seen a promotion of that or a cross post from a photographer that attended those. And, asked me to shoot a 1-hour keynote at their conference. And that was it. I mean, once you kind of have positive feedback doing one thing, it can, as long as you don't completely blow it at some point, it can create a positive feedback loop.
Jen, you hear that? Don't blow it.
Are you worried I'm going to blow it?
Yeah. But it's okay to also take risks. And like I've done many talks where I didn't rehearse it ahead of time. And I've done literally at least 2 or 3, even really, really big ones where I threw out my entire talk, like as I was going up on stage. I was like, you know what? You're all sitting here. Let's keep this real and just edit a wedding together. And then my entire talk would be just editing a wedding and talking through stuff that I was like literally the wedding I needed to deliver like the next one. And
get some work done.
He was like, you guys have time, right?
Well, that's the funny thing is there are so many things you pick up on when you sit down and watch the tedious process of what is actually required in doing this work that nobody would optionally choose to watch as like an hour-long YouTube video. That would suck. You'd be like, oh my God, this is painful to get through. But it's just different when you're in front of people and you're experiencing it together. And it's different when they know it's a genuine off the cuff, like, let's just figure this out together. I've always gotten good feedback from doing stuff like that, but it's also a bit of a risk. You don't wanna,
Ben's like, do not do that.
the problem usually comes when you improvise like that with time, and you want to always be respectful of time. And if you don't have a good sense of when you need to start the wrap up phase of whatever talk you're doing, that's scary. When you start to just kind of ramble and it's 10 or 15 minutes over what you should have been, then it's like nobody's having fun anymore. Which I've seen that happen before.
Many
so
conferences.
Be careful with the timing. Yeah.
Jen, do you know I have a really tight 43 minutes. It's on the dot.
Oh,
Do you know how many times I've rehearsed?
Go overtime. That's
Do you know
thing
how many times I've rehearsed my talk for my talk? More times than I can count, but I've timed it, and it's a tight 43 minutes. We're good. Do you even know how long your talk is?
That's without somebody interrupting you, though.
No one's going to interrupt because I'm not going to talk about destination weddings.
People will raise their hand. People will raise their hand and, can you explain this? And
is it an intimate enough space that you need a microphone or not? Like maybe
everyone's getting a wireless mic.
People.
So, yeah. I mean,
I meant the audience members. Like, are they going to be able to yell things?
Oh, probably.
Maybe. Yeah.
For sure.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah, I'm anticipating about 100 people or so.
Nice.
It should be intimate enough. But you know what I'm doing? I'm trying to stuff everyone's faces with danishes and muffins so they can't ask questions and they can't talk. I guess
that's my workshop. My full day workshop. I always get Chipotle catered in the middle of it, and that's right before I get to the really good stuff. It's too sleepy to remember whatever I talk about after the live shoots.
Ben attended a workshop a long time ago, and the person who hosted the workshop ordered pizza and then charged everybody $3 for the pizza.
What? Wow.
He's like, hey, you guys want to go out for lunch? I was like, yeah, let's go out for lunch. And he ordered, like 2 or 3 pies or something like that. And he asked everyone to chip in $3. I was like, are you kidding me? Because the workshop was like $700, $800 a person. So my wife and I, we both went. It was like $1,500 for the both of us. Each class had about 30 people, right?
That's so weird.
Yeah, he made everyone pay $3 for the pizza. Very big name too. Very big name in the industry. I was very surprised.
Huge name.
It's tough because so often the people like hosting a workshop like that, it is a small business. It's like one person, maybe 2. And so there's always this apprehension, I think, of unless it's a terrible experience of like publicly saying critical feedback of things like that. But I would want to know if that entire decision sort of informs a lot of how that person probably runs their business, for better or for worse. Maybe that's what it takes to be successful in the way that they shoot. I don't know, but I would want to know that as feedback, as sort of like $3.
That's why everyone who's coming to the summit, they're getting coffee, they're getting tea. I got decaf, danishes, muffins, and so I'm like,
water.
Everyone's getting water. Right. I asked Karis, I was like, should I give snacks too? I was like, do you want people like just opening wrappers for a good 5 hours?
Like,
just people opening chocolate wrappers.
Yeah. That's going to drive Ben crazy. So I was like, we'll just give them like...
stores in the lobby. There's a coffee shop. There's a
sandwich. I don't want to be that guy who says, oh my God, I paid this much to come to the summit and then they didn't even get me coffee.
I'm just saying, like, if everyone needs to go eat, they don't have to go that far either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for lunch, definitely. But in the morning, we'll have like coffees and stuff. So come early.
Yeah, come early, get some food. But Sam, have you attended any workshops as an attendee and not as an educator? And maybe is there some things that you were able to take away from that you brought into your business?
Yep. Ryan Brenneiser's workshop way back in the day. And one of the things that got me so excited about doing my own series of workshops was the experience at his, not even because, although I did learn a lot of very valuable things, it was the relationship building that enabled. Mm-hmm. I'm still to this day friends with 3 or 4 people that I met in person at his workshop that I never otherwise would have. And one of the most important online groups that I was a part of, it's called SWPB. It was a Flickr discussion group, stood for Starting a Wedding Photography Business. And I attended Ryan's workshop, I think just through his blog post and announcing it there, and met all these people who were like, oh, you're not a part of SWPB? That's how we all know each other, blah, blah, blah. I was able to join that group, and 50 times the number of relationships of awesome photographers all over the world that I was able to make through that connection. So it's and what's tricky about that kind of experience as being valuable for a workshop, that's really hard to say in a description of the workshop. Like, you're going to build relationships that could change your life or last forever. Like, that's so cheesy to actually say out loud, but it is kind of the truth. And it's also an unknown variable. Like, some workshops that might be the case, and I've seen it, and other workshops, like, everybody gets along, but nobody's like making best friends. But that is a huge part of why it's so great and to do things in person compared to just being stuck in our online bubbles.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said this because, my wife and I, for the first 6 years of our business, we just kept our heads down and worked and worked and worked. We pretty much stayed in our own bubble. We didn't really have a network of friends and colleagues where we could get CC on our work. We didn't know we sucked. We didn't know if we were any good. We were just trying to keep our head above water, put a roof over our head, and, just maintain this business. And I think that all changed in 2015, 2016 when we met Jen and Ro at WPPI. And ever since then, we've been growing our network, and I have to say, it's been a complete game changer in our business. It's sometimes it's not about what you know or even who you know. It's like who knows you as well. That can open a lot of doors, a lot of opportunities for you. But again, like you said, it does sound a little cheesy, but the power that you get from these conferences isn't always what you get in the classroom. It's happening in the cafes around the corner from where their classes are taking place.
It's almost like a lot of conferences and workshops I've been to. It's like the educational part is just the excuse to get together, and it's a shame that we can't all just like spend money to all get together and hang out. You have to, in your brain, like justify it somehow. As well, learn something while you're at it. But that is kind of how I see them sometimes.
Yeah, the reason why you're here is because you made me a grilled cheese sandwich about a year ago.
Was that just last year? Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I was like, Sam Hurd's making grilled cheese sandwiches for everyone? Count me in.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Are you coming to any of those conferences next year?
Yeah, I think I'll be at both Imaging and WPPI. I haven't booked flights or anything yet, but I hope to. Yeah, they're definitely fun. And then just ramping back up my own personal workshops, but still figuring out logistics and dates for all of those. I'm still getting wedding inquiries for the spring. It's crazy. I just booked a April wedding. It's like, whoa.
Wow.
And I just got an inquiry for another April wedding as well. It's like, you guys.
Oh my goodness, people are taking their sweet time. That's been the thing. Yeah. Oh, that's another great segue to my other question for you. Every year, I don't know if you did it last year, your state of the industry. Are you still working on the current one?
Yep. I collected all the data and then launched Insight. It's like, I don't have time for this. So the data's sitting there.
Where do you find the time, Sam? Where do you find the time?
Yeah. Well, and I took ownership of my entirely new website that I worked like 6 months with my web guy to design. And I got that in June. And that I need to launch my entire totally new website, which I really want to do in January. But I want to launch it with my best of 2023 post. It'd be great if I could launch the new site with that. So the state of the industry the report is gonna come out. It'll probably be in January or something like that. As long as it's a month or two before like people start actually getting busy with wedding season again is probably fine. But what's amazing is this year, and the main reason I did skip a year. I've got data from every year, but I didn't release it last year because I was just too busy. And it's hard for me to analyze the data because I'm not a professional at doing that. But now, using tools like AI and ChatGPT and all that, it's so much easier to tease out interesting insights and stuff. So that's the primary reason I decided to bring it back, was that I can just lean on ChatGPT to do that tedious, like, what am I really seeing that's interesting here? Work, which I did not enjoy from the last ones.
And like interesting trends that you noticed that you can tease us about?
Oh gosh, yes, but I don't remember what they are because I teased them like months ago, and now I'm like, oh god, what did
you have to be on a Patreon to get that info. You got to be on a Patreon to get that info, guys.
Somewhere on my Patreon. I do remember some of the, and this is probably going to be obvious, but at least it reinforces the blurry photo trend. People seem to be over, and the direct flash trend as well. I think it kind of.
I was just getting started on that trend.
No.
That's okay. You'll be so late that it's cool again.
You'll bring it back.
That seems to be on brand for me. I'm posting all those things on my Facebook page.
So people are getting
Yeah,
over it.
it is cool. What's funny about the state of the industry report is I've actually seen a lot of other places like start to do that now. I think a few companies and like websites realized how valuable that can be. But if there's a brand behind the thing, I immediately don't trust it because I'm like, okay, if pick time is like gathering all this data, like how honest are they going to surface any like critique or trends when it comes to gallery hosts or like competitors in their space? Probably not. And I'm guessing a lot of those people would lie by omission, if nothing else. And I do think it's nice that I have no vested interest in any of the results. I just want to see what the obvious overall trends are, and present that totally impartially to people, to patrons first because they invest in me, but to everybody ultimately.
What did I say?
There's no.
Awesome.
Yep.
Are we going to talk about creating AI art and selling prints?
No, don't.
Oh, God.
If you've met my husband, you haven't met my husband.
How disgusting I think
He
it is.
likes to throw logs into a fire.
Same here.
More like cans of gasoline,
Nice.
Constantly. We don't have to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Generative AI is going to change a lot, and I am particularly annoyed and to some degree just pissed off at certain photographers specifically that have really embraced generative AI in a way that they I think it's an exciting, interesting space to be able to type something in and get like a really compelling, realistic photo of the idea that you had. It's an amazing technology. But as a photographer, when you take the approach to pivot toward posting majority, even partially, but certainly 100% rendered AI imagery, and you don't make it painfully clear what it took to make that thing, people will read into your, the baseline assumption that you're a photographer, that some component of this thing is real or is a composite maybe, or maybe it is just a real photo. You could even explicitly say in a hashtag or something like Mid-Journey or Dolly or even the word AI, and people still will assume some component of this is a photograph, if that is what you are known for historically. In my opinion, photographers really shouldn't go anywhere near that kind of stuff in terms of letting it represent your work in any way, shape, or form, unless you're maybe willing to like have a tutorial or make it very clear that like all this took was text or it took a link to a photo that I took plus some text. It's just a totally different thing. And so many people, as well known, as much as all of us and people listening might know now what it takes to generate something in AI, the average person still does not. And certainly people that are 10, 20 plus years older than us, they have no idea. They still think in this old paradigm where, they're looking at an image, like some work must have been done to put these pixels where they are. The entirety of the internet training data for something. It's not actually the photographer. Anyway, so there's a lot we could say about it, but yeah, no, this is not, you're just kind of riding on the coattails of people thinking there's some legitimate photograph somehow being used in this process, and there almost never is.
But what if they used AI in Photoshop to remove things? I mean, that's still kosher?
Yeah. It's a tough thing. I think it's generally fine because like removing things out of a photo, like the core, like the most of the pixels that you're looking at are still like from a real life photo. But it's always been kind of sketchy where I often confuse and get a lot of pushback from people when I'll describe something they've done in a photo as like, no, this is more like digital illustration. And it's not because they're literally illustrating, but they're like dodging and burning the light in a way that actually it is more like they're illustrating than they are taking a photo. Or they'll add motion blur selectively to shots, to original source photos, but like most of the image is now motion blur that was kind of drawn in using a tablet or their mouse in a way that it's kind of like you're more illustrating than anything else. So like anything, there's a balance, and there's a certain point where it's gone too far. And there's another point where the intention and it's not so detached from the original source photo that it's a problem. But I don't know. It's just tough. And in a big way, I think we're going to have to start flagging ourselves as being I don't know what the term should be, but real photographer. Just the way that film photographers, they didn't used to have to call themselves film photographers. They were just a photographer. And the baseline underlying assumption was they shot film because that existed. Then over time, as things became digitized, like they had to label themselves film photographer. Now everybody understands and kind of appreciates that for what it is. I think we're going to have something similar for photographers that are mostly showing actual photographs, which is going to be weird, but yeah. And there's going to be people that just lie. Yeah, it's a weird time right now, but
yeah,
that's what I tried to do with Insight was bridge the gap and leverage these really cool, powerful tools in a way that still feels good. Like I still have to recognize what I think is cool in the render and still make the photo and direct my couples into it or position myself into actually making the photo based off of this inspiration. I'll tell you right now, it blows my mind that some photographers that I know that have like an entire AI series didn't just use that as inspiration to go make actual photos in that style. It's crazy to me that they just stopped with the AI render and here it is. You can buy it as a print. Like many people, that's all they do. Is here it is. You can buy it as a print. They should have gone out, taken that, and recreated it in as an inspiration for an actual photo because they know how to take that photo.
Yeah,
right. True. I mean, like I use ChatGPT. I mean, I'll be completely transparent. I use ChatGPT to come up with ideas, but the content is still mine. You know what I mean? I still have to write it because sometimes coming up with ideas. Sometimes we get into a writer's block or an artist's block. We just blank out. And it's awesome that we have these tools at our disposal now to kind of help us get inspired a little bit, right? But at the end of the day, you still got to do the work. You know what I mean? So,
and there's people who will do majority of their work through AI, and I think the layperson now is starting to get an idea of can kind of see what's kind of sketchy and what's not. So I think the more it's becoming more popular, people are becoming a little bit more knowledgeable about it.
Yeah, people can see.
I think it's getting harder to tell though. I've seen some images, like usually the hands or the ears are dead giveaway.
Have you seen the photos from version 6?
That's what I'm saying. Like I can still tell, but it's getting harder. It's getting harder to besides like the skin smoothing.
Skin, yep. It's mainly the skin, super smooth skin. Yep.
So anyway, so Sam is going to be one of our esteemed guests who'll be joining us on the stage at the Focus Day of Summit on January 11th. So Sam, what will you be sharing with us, with the audience, with the attendees on the stage?
Hard to say.
Please don't edit. Please don't edit for 45 minutes. He's going to do a demonstration for his new app for 45 minutes.
Ben's not sleeping for 2 weeks, Sam. We can't joke anymore.
No, I think I probably will talk about AI and some about Insight because that's the thing I'm most involved with and have spent so much time working on. But I really want to talk about it not as like a self-promotional thing, but as an example of how even if you are uncomfortable with the new AI tools as they exist, it's so important to at least familiarize yourself with them and where they're at on a regular basis, because it might become obvious to you at some point later on where you can bridge the gap in a way that it is now useful, or in your own head you can like ethically and morally feel good about the way that this is used. Maybe even something like Insight is still weirdly uncomfortable for you, but for me, I've come full circle and realized its value in a way that I love. But if nothing else, I just wanted to sort of demonstrate like how these tools, they're going to keep evolving and existing no matter what you decide. So at least being aware of what's out there and, I think serve to benefit everybody at some point. You don't want to clutch too hard to the way photography exists now, or you might go through that painful decade or two of film photographers did, where like just they were not making any money anymore. And now they've kind of come back. I know a lot of film photographers that like have it as a very expensive add-on for their wedding packages and whatnot, but it took a while to kind of come back to that, I think. So that's, where I'm at right now. We'll see though. We'll see what happens. Another thing I like to do is listen to other speakers at conferences, not always, but sometimes. And when I pick up on a pattern or a theme that's too repetitive, I'll tend to pivot on the fly just so that people aren't saying too much of the same thing, which is totally possible with AI now because it is such a mainstream topic. But
I think you might be the only person talking about AI.
All right. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll take it.
Yep.
I think so. Mm-hmm. So I think you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jen, where do you want to go from here?
No, I think we're good.
There's no wedding tea? No?
There's no tea?
No.
Oh, you know what, Sam? I would love to know if Sam has any wedding tea, like any kind of crazy wedding stories.
Crazy wedding stories, yep.
Do you have a crazy wedding story?
Oh, man. The problem is I've shot like 500 plus weddings. And so I really let the craziness enter and exit my brain immediately. Unless it's documented as a photo. I mean, I've just seen countless people like wheeled out in ambulances from drinking too much and, stripped naked down the street from drinking too much. And a lot of it's from just drinking too much. But honestly, when it comes down to like my core client, there's a 1 year, not that far away actually, that 2 weekends in a row, I had somebody collapse during the ceremony and a paramedic had to come wheel them out. One weekend that happened. Very next weekend that happened again. It's like, what is happening? It wasn't even that hot.
Were they drunk or like
it was me? No.
Was it a summer? Was it a summer? Was it a summer wedding?
Like collapsed.
Was it a summer outdoor wedding?
It wasn't hot. It wasn't like warm or anything that I would have thought would cause somebody to collapse. So I've seen all kinds of stuff like that. It's usually medical emergencies or too much alcohol. Thankfully,
nothing scandalous though. Nothing scandalous.
Nothing scandalous. My clients have always been just. It's usually to do with somebody else's, also not directly my clients in any way.
Yeah,
they're always just the best people. So grateful.
It's always like they don't know how to act and they're causing a scene.
Yeah,
doing crazy things.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks.
So Sam, where can people find you? I'll leave those links in the show notes and stuff. But where can our audience members find you? Where do you want them to find you?
Everything's kind of centralized on Instagram. So Instagram.com/IamTheSam. And then my website, of course, Sam Hurd Photography. And I have a Patreon that I'm very active on, patreon.com/Sam Hurd. So those are the primary vectors all over the place in other ways and places, but don't worry.
Yeah, just Google his name, guys. Just Google his name. It's 7 letters long.
You're also going to come across an NFL player who was convicted for drug
trafficking. Right. Yeah.
Have you guys ever Googled yourself? There's a knitting magician, Ben Lau. There's a knitting magician.
Knitting magician.
What's a knitting magician?
What the heck is knitting magician? He knits.
He's a part of a knitting group, and he has his profile photos, him holding up cards and stuff. Like, it's really corny. Yeah. That's not me, guys. It's not me. Just so we make that clear. Well, Sam, I can't thank you enough for hopping on with us today. We can't wait to hear what you have in store for us at the summit. Can't wait to see you in a few weeks.
Thank you for listening to my ranting and rambles. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, we'll clean it up in post. We'll clean it up in post. Can we? Hey, Dirty, can we clean it up in post? Yeah, we'll hear from him. We'll hear from him in about a week.
No, it was great. Thank you so much. We learned a lot. We always see you on Instagram and stuff, but never really knew your history and kind of where your journey's been. So that was good.
Well, Sam, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you on board.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you in a few weeks. All right.
Thank you all. Yeah, I can't wait. Have a happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Later, Sam.
Bye.
Focused AF is a fun, business-focused podcast for wedding creatives.
Co-hosted by award-winning husband and wife wedding photography teams, Ben and Karis.
And Jen and Ro, where we help fellow wedding creatives with their sales and marketing.
With laid-back conversations and real talk with some of our most favorite people in the universe.
And with that being said, are you Focused AF?
I am Focused AF today.
We are Focused AF.
I think I might be Focused AF.
Welcome to the Focused AF podcast.